Hi, thanks for listening to the Practicing Connection podcast. I'm Jessica, and my co-host Coral is here as well. Today we'll be talking about check-ins for yourself and your team while navigating through transition or uncertainty. Hey, Coral, how are you?
Hey, Jessica, I'm great. Thank you. We've been enjoying a touch of summer weather here in Florida and just been getting some time at the beach and the water as well, which also just the way that I'm wired helps me feel grounded and a little bit more present. So that's always a nice, refreshing kind of reconnect.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I feel like there's lots and lots of research out there about nature and how it can make us feel that way. And frankly, that sounds wonderful. I think I'll copy you and head out to Lake Michigan the first time it's warm enough. We are not experiencing summer weather here right now, but that's okay. It'll be warm enough soon. And while it's not the ocean, but it almost sounds the same, and there's a beach nearby where I live. So I think the tourism marketers like to call the Great Lakes the third coast, which I don't think has caught on with everyone, except for those of us who live near it. I think they say something like, I don't remember how many, it's like over 1,100 or 1,200 miles of coastline.
whoa,
Yeah, people like the Great Lakes are huge.
I had no idea. That's
Yeah.
also the first time I've heard the phrase the third coast, and I lived up that way for several years.
I mean,
Yeah.
it might be a newer thing. I don't know. But for me, the sound of the water, the breeze, the open sky, and the soft sand are what I go for when I'm looking for beach time. And I feel pretty lucky that even though I'm, middle of the country, I do have a taste of that kind of life. Everything but the water itself, since I can't swim.
No, you're so right. Lake Michigan is so pretty. That area is just so lovely. And, I think it's so important, regardless of how you're interfacing with nature, to just get that touch point to reconnect and just get grounded and just kind of, give yourself some breathing space. It's so important. And I'm glad that you've got that opportunity up that way too.
Well, we'd love to hear what lake is inspiring you or what ocean is inspiring you as well, or anything that's inspiring you. So please share by clicking the send us a text message at the top of the description of this episode. When you click the link, your text messaging app will open and you'll see a 7-digit number and the words do not remove. Type your message after that and click send. If you are listening on a computer, you can email us at practicingconnection@oneop.org. So let us know what's inspiring you right now. All right, let's learn more about this practice, Coral. Please tell us a little bit more about the practice you're going to be sharing and why you chose it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess. So this one today is a catchphrase that I came up with. Temperature checks for change. You can call it whatever you like, though. But, really down to the nuts and bolts, it's designed as a simple and intentional way to check in with yourself as a leader, but also to get a read on how your team is doing. So when we're navigating change, we don't always have all of the answers, but we can build awareness and empathy and responsiveness by pausing to check where we're at, where our team is at as well. And, really at the core, these kind of moments, they help us stay human and they also help our teams feel seen.
Yeah, and I also happen to think that catchphrases you come up with yourself is a good way to name all these activities, right? Because some of the activities that we practice don't have a name. So it's actually kind of fun that we get to give them one. So walk us through the temperature checks for change.
Sure thing. So this practice, it has two parts. The first one is for leaders and the second one is for teams. And you can use them together or separately depending on the scenario and what's needed in that case. And also this first part may sound a little familiar if you listened to last week's episode. This self-check-in, it does build on last week's practice that you introduced, Jess, the leadership alignment reflection. So part one is this self-check-in, and it's for you as a leader if you are leading teams. Take 5 minutes or so before or after a meeting, or perhaps at the start of your day. It really can happen anywhere that you just need this little check-in nugget. And you can ask yourself any of the following questions and just reflect on, how am I feeling right now? Mentally, emotionally, physically? What's weighing on me? How do I want to show up today or even in this conversation? And then the final thing to consider in this first phase is, what is one small thing that I can do to support my team or myself today? And if you want to keep this a little bit more, nuts and bolts or quantitative. You can even give yourself a quick score from 1 to 5 in areas such as energy, clarity, confidence, not necessarily as a judgment, but just rather as a, data gathering to give yourself some quick insight if that's helpful for you. So the second part is your team check-in. Of course, you can do this in any instance. If you don't need to do a self check-in, you can just dive right into this space if you need to. And this is for use during something such as a team meeting, especially if you have some things that have felt uncertain or even tense. There's a couple formats and a couple, actually didn't make this list, but maybe we can talk about those in a later practicast. But 2 easy formats for consideration. The first one is called fist to 5. And you can ask a question such as, how supported do you feel right now? Or even, how aligned do you feel with what we're working on? And then it's just a quick hit. You can have everyone show a number with their hand, a fist for 0, 5 for completely aligned, and then, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up the line from there. And if you'd like to do a follow-up, you can invite anyone to share a quick sentence about their number and, unpack anything along those lines.
If you don't mind, Carl, I'll just add a really quick thing. Some groups, you don't have to do it this way, but some groups have said if the decision you're making is important enough that if someone is at a fist for 0, then that's a deal breaker and it's time to have a conversation. Like, how can we get that to a 1 or a 2 or a 3? And if it's a 5, then that is, obviously a complete alignment. But that also kind of gives your team a major voice in like how, and it really kind of builds that consensus and that culture of being able to come to consensus together.
Absolutely. Thanks for that additional insight, Jess. So the second format that you could leverage perhaps is something called 1-word round. And you can ask, what's one word that describes how you're feeling today? And everyone, whoever would like to participate, can share that in the chat if you're in a virtual meeting, or even aloud if you're together in person. And you don't need to necessarily respond or fix anything right in that moment, but it just gives people a chance to be heard and really do a pulse check or a temperature check, right, of how everybody's doing. And just that quick synopsis, you may find some trends or some, consistencies across your team, or maybe there's a lot of variety where folks are at, but it's just that quick check-in to just see where everyone's at. And then just to bring everything home, we certainly want to do a little bit of follow-up and reflection after you have one or both of those practices. And so after the check-in, you want to make sure that you take a moment to reflect, either with yourself or even with your team, to unpack anything if the time feels right. Are there patterns emerging like we just mentioned? Does someone need a follow-up, perhaps on a 1-to-1? Or could you share some feedback that you're hearing to show that it really does matter and that you're taking that into account while navigating these times of transition or change? And really coming back to the foundation of things, these moments are so important. They do take a little bit of time and additional awareness and intentionality. But the great opportunity here is that it helps build trust within your collaborative team, and it allows everyone to feel just a little bit more grounded, even if that ground underneath their feet is shifting a little bit.
I love that. And I'm always a huge fan of one-on-one meetings, especially when things aren't, if things are feeling a little bit off, maybe. So thanks so much for guiding us through that.
Absolutely. And, I think really too, the key here, it's just as with any practice, it's not about nailing this perfectly, right, Jessica? It's just about staying present with yourself, with your people, and noticing what's happening within you and around you best as you can, and taking all of that into consideration day by day.
I feel like you just described what life is about. All right. That's it for this episode. Thanks so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, click the share button in your podcast app to share it with a friend. We'll be back next week with a new episode. Until then, keep practicing.
The Practicing Connection podcast is a production of OneOp and is supported by the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the Office of Military Family Readiness Policy, U.S. Department of Defense, under award number 2023-48770-41333.